Hello students, in the online classes of B.Sc part 1st Bio, in paper 1st we are studying about fossils, and so far we have studied about the types of fossils, the formation of fossils, the conditions for fossilizations and the significance of fossils. No doubt that fossil records are very helpful and important in understanding the process of evolution and in knowing the past life, but the greatest drawbacks in there is their incompleteness. The vast majority of organisms that have lived on earth never fossilized. For example, jellyfish and worms. They are too squishy to fossilize very often. Then the butterflies, too delicate for most parts, and anything that lived on mountain slopes or in the fast moving rivers, which is unlikely to be covered by sediment and preserved. So, there is an incompleteness of fossil records. The reasons for the incompleteness of fossils are discussed in this lecture today in the imperfection of fossil records. The first difficulty is the difficulties in fossilization. Majority of the animals do not get proper conditions for fossilization. They are destroyed either by predators or scavengers, or they are exposed to air for disintegration. Generally, the hard parts of the body are fossilized, but majority of the animals do not have any hard parts. This means that most of the protozoans, except the foraminiferans, majority of coelenterates, worms, helminthes, they did not have a chance for fossilization. Of the several methods of fossilization, the best chances are offered to the animals that live in the oceans. The animals that live in fresh water have the second next best chance, and the terrestrial animals which have least opportunity of changing into fossils. All the periods in the earth history were not equally favorable for the formation and preservation of sedimentary rocks, because during the glacial ages the continental shelves were largely exposed, while during warm ages the low land areas and the continental shelves were submerged. During submergence, newly deposited stratum together with its fossils was protected and preserved by the deposition of additional strata. Thus, the fossils of the period of submergence were more abundant than those of the period of elevation. Then comes the destruction of fossils. Of the animals which are fossilized, only a few escape the irony of destruction. These are exposed to several natural destructive forces which can be summarized as: first, the fossils present in the deeper rocks with thousands of feet of other deposits above them are usually crushed and distorted. The rocks are exposed to the tremendous pressure and heat, which may result in the alteration of deposits and the destruction of fossils due to recrystallization of the minerals of the rocks and fossils. Then, due to upheaval during mountain formation, changes occur in the strata, and the rocks rise up in the form of peaks thousands feet above the ground. This exposes the rocks and the fossils contained in them to destruction by the natural forces. Then the rivers flowing down from the mountains carry rocks which are finally turned into sand, and this destroys the fossils contained in the rocks. Rivers may cut deep gorges through many successive strata, thereby destroying the fossils. Erosion by wind and water. The worn out rocks and the high mountain peaks are thus blown down to low hills. One can never imagine how many pages of chapters from the fossil records might be spoilt in this way. Then the glaciation carry away superficial rocks, leaving the deeper layers exposed for erosion. The cracks in the rocks containing fossils due to tension may result in the destruction of fossils. Sliding or slipping of the crust they also disturb the sequence of fossils, and this may result in destruction of some of them. And then the third difficulty is the difficulties in exploring the fossils. Of the fossils which escape destruction, only a few are noticed by the paleontologists because of several practical difficulties, which are: it is not practically possible to dig out the deeply situated fossils which are present in the older rocks and are buried under the younger rocks. The sedimentary rocks are formed under the sea and so also contained fossils which remain unnoticed, and even their digging is not practically possible. Then the major portion of the earth is covered with sea. A part is covered with thick jungles and some portion is covered with ice. All such places are not accessible for the paleontologist to go and collect the fossils. Then the high mountain peaks are also unexplorable, and even if the fossils are exposed there, they are left unnoticed and unread. Some areas are thickly inhabited where digging is not at all possible. So these are the few difficulties in exploring the fossils. Thus our knowledge about the fossils has been very superficial and incomplete and will remain so in the due course. The story of evolution contained in the sedimentary rocks in the form of fossils has several pages and chapters missing and unrecorded, while some others are disturbed. Even though in fragments, these records present a clear testimony of the fact of evolution, and considerable details have been worked out in many lines of descent.